Performance-enhancing drugs. Is the juice worth the squeeze? By Alessandro Finatieri, Tyler Krapingna, Jacob Panagakos, Tyler Richardson, and Michael Sauer. Performance-enhancing drugs, also known as PEDs by most. Both professional and amateur athletes all over the world use these substances. An amateur athlete would use PEDs for the reason to excel against your competition to help you move to that professional level in your sport, while a professional athlete would use PEDs for the reason to push their body to unseen limits that both yourself and your fans have never experienced. The bottom line, PEDs help athletes improve their performance levels. When we think about our sports idol, we think, how did they achieve such high performance levels in their sport of profession? A perfect example of this letdown is Lance Armstrong. He is a professional cyclist who achieved great accomplishments, including winning the biggest title in his profession, La Tour de France. But the reality was Armstrong cheated by using illegal substances. Once these details were revealed on Lance Armstrong and his use of PEDs in competition, he was wiped of all his title winnings and endorsement deals in his career. Although he lost his winnings and contracts, he lost something much greater than this. He lost his fans and is now perceived by others as a cheat and no longer a sports hero. When it comes to the laws of the use of PEDs, have different rules for different scenarios. For example, for the general athlete who does not compete professionally, they have the option to use PEDs, but unfortunately it is illegal to purchase or sell these substances. In terms of professional athletes, there are different criteria when it comes to drug consumption, where the athletes are able to use PEDs, or the other extreme, absolutely no tolerance when it comes to PEDs. Rare, but for some sports, are limited to the use of certain PEDs. For those permitted, there are consumption regulations. The most popular PED amongst athletes are stimulants, which enhances the cognitive and athletic performance by increasing focus, energy, metabolic rate, and aggression, and by decreasing preserved exertion. Another form of PEDs is nootropics, which help increase human cognition, including memory, short-term and long-term. Painkillers is a PED allowing an athlete to push their performance levels to new heights and endure beyond the usual pain threshold. On the other hand, sedatives and anxiolytics are sometimes used in sports where precision is needed, more specifically steady hands and accurate aim, and also help to overcome excessive nervousness or discomfort. Athletes to expel water from the bodies use diuretics. Blood boosters increase the oxygen carrying capacity of blood beyond the individual's natural capacity, helping athletes reach new cardiovascular limits. Lastly, a masking drug is simply any drug used to prevent the detection of other classes of drugs. All these PEDs may be injected into the human body in various ways, such as liquid, pill, or injections.
Marginal costs to the athlete include increased cholesterol levels, which may lead to hypertension, liver damage, such as cirrhosis, tendon damage, such as tears and tendinitis, irregular heartbeats and other heart problems, irreversible organ damage, and gynecomastia. The image to the right is a visual on how steroids can enlarge the heart and increase the chance of myocardial infarction, which is also known as a heart attack, making the heart work much harder than a regular person would have to. Other costs to the athlete include loss of relationships due to increased aggression, loss of relationships also due to increased or decreased libido, and alterations in cognitive processes and content. So basically, the whole changes in how the brain functions. These problems may lead to a loss of a job, may lead to decreased grades in adolescent and high school age athletes, and they may lead to other problems in friendships or parental relationships in adolescent athletes. Obviously, athletes are more interested in the short-term benefits of PED use. Athletes maximize the utility over the short term in getting increased strength, stamina, etc., which allows them to excel in their sport. Athletes can go beyond the norm, which may lead to increased likelihood that records will be broken, leading the sport to get more competitive. The sport may also become more aggressive and exciting to the fans, which may lead to an increased fan base, which in turn turns into more revenue for the team or franchise. PED use also comes with a multitude of negative side effects. Increased healthcare costs later in life for PED users causes the taxpayers of Canada to increase their taxpayer cost in healthcare. Athletes in richer countries using PEDs may also have more access to these substances and substances of higher quality, which may put poorer countries at a sport disadvantage. Increased prevalence in the major leagues may also have some sort of trickle-down effect into the minor leagues, enticing many more people to start and also enticing many more youths to start as well.
Game theory is basically the science of strategy and making strategic choices. It tries to determine the actions that participants should take to secure the best outcomes for themselves in a wide array of games, all while keeping the key component of interdependence. This deals with conflicts of interest between parties who know each other's preferences but not their actual intentions or decisions. It then deduces the best course of action for any rational player. The Nash equilibrium is when there is a set of choices, one for each player, such that each person's strategy is best for him when all others are playing their best strategies. This outcome may not be the best socially optimal outcome. The decisions faced by athletes whether or not to utilize performance-enhancing drugs can be analyzed through the use of game theory's most popular game known as the prisoner dilemma. The athlete's dilemma can be set up using a matrix which consists of both options to use or not to use performance-enhancing drugs. Upon further inspection of the four quadrants of the matrix, the best socially optimal option would be for both athletes to not use PEDs because it would be safer health-wise for both participants, as well as reducing the legal market for these drugs, which creates a safer place for everyone. However, if one of the athletes uses PEDs and the other athlete doesn't, the athlete gains an advantage. So to minimize the potential for another athlete to gain an advantage from using PEDs, both athletes will use the performance-enhancing drugs. This decision results from the competitiveness of the sport and the need to be the best. Other than just the two athletes involved in the dilemma, there appears to be a third party that also contributes to the athlete's decision to take performance-enhancing drugs. This third party is the actual fans of that sport. Not only is it costly to test every single athlete in every sport, but the testing of every athlete could produce results that many people would not want to see. These results would show that more people are using performance-enhancing drugs than fans originally thought. This in turn has a negative effect on that particular sport and the way the fans see it, which could affect funding and other opportunities for the sports to grow. We must look at the opportunity cost of not taking PEDs to really find out why athletes choose to use these drugs. Opportunity cost is commonly described as the opportunities that are foregone resulting from a certain decision or expenditure. Some opportunity costs are increased salaries in contracts awarded to players who outperform their competitors, longer contract in terms of number of years signed, which provides a safety blanket for players, potential chances to break outstanding records which are set by the most athletically gifted people, and lastly, sponsorship money from big brand names such as Nike, Adidas, and etc. for being the best in their respective.
The use of PEDs results in several economic issues that produce undesirable effects. These economic issues include effects on the healthcare system, and smaller economic issues that include productivity losses, enforcement, and testing and legal intervention. Each of the aforementioned areas all have substantial monetary costs associated with them that produce inefficient government spending within the economy. It is quite evident that PEDs such as steroids, EPO, and HGH all have some negative side effects on the human body. These side effects can result in both short and long-term health conditions. For example, the short-term side effects associated with PED consumption include heart damage and also impotence. These effects may result in undesired long-term conditions, which do cost the healthcare system billions of dollars in order to care for these people. These costs not only include medical bills and hospital stays, but all the rising insurance costs as well. Despite the fact that PED use and abuse may not cause as many health problems per user in comparison to drugs such as cocaine, heroin, and methamphetamine, the drugs that arise from PED-related cases and admitted PED users demonstrate that the consequences of consuming these substances can be just as dire. Since healthcare is a government-subsidized initiative, these costs can result in heavy financial strain on individual provinces. The most noteworthy cost driver associated with this issue is prevention and education.
25% of economic damage from PEDs is caused from what the government defines as productivity losses. These losses include premature deaths and sick leave payments. Enforcement costs include the cost of persecuting and jailing those who participate in the black market. This is estimated to be between $300 and $400 million, and the effectiveness is estimated to be 30%. Approximately $90 million each year is spent by the government on testing procedures that amateur and professional athletes must do. Legal intervention costs is mostly made up of investigation expenses. Here is a pie graph of the breakdown of costs associated with economic issues. As you can see, healthcare costs make up the majority, while legal intervention is the smallest. There are an unlimited number of options that you can take to enforce PED usage. Some of the most common ones seen, though, are ones with strict regulation, moderate regulation, and no regulation. The best possible policy would probably be the one that optimizes total welfare between all stakeholders involved. It is unlikely that one policy would be useful for all sports. The International Olympic Committee uses target testing and random testing. This means that athletes can be randomly tested at any time. Athletes who break the rules will have their medals taken away and any points they have earned taken away. The first offense results in a 2-year ban and the second results in a lifetime ban. Even entire teams can be disqualified if only one team member breaks the rules. The IOC is also capable of withholding funding to nations that don't comply with anti-doping rules. Most professional sports use a moderate amount of regulation. An example of this is the National Hockey League, which is considered to be more open than other professional sports leagues. Random testing is done 3 times a year and is not done during game days, off-season, and during the playoffs. This gives players a chance to work around the rules and use PEDs with caution. The NHL uses a 3-strike policy. We can see a growing movement pushing for sports to adopt policies that have little to no regulation. However, currently no major sports have a PED policy like this, so a good comparison would be a free market economy, in which consumers would determine the level of doping that they want and an optimal equilibrium would be found. Athletes who choose to use PEDs would do so based on what their competitors are doing and what their fans really want. Other policies would also reach equilibriums, but they would feature deadweight losses. To conclude, PEDs are obviously a controversial topic in sport, and good arguments can be made for both sides of their use. In making any decision about the use of PEDs, it is important to take into account all of the main factors that we talked about in this presentation.